All right. Thank you, comrades. All right, I guess we'll get started for our final panel for the Ecosocialism 2025 conference, Ecosocialism, not barbarism. And yeah, that's what I was waiting for that. So my name is Jacob Andrafa. I'm sure a lot of people here have come across me from the conference. So I'm one of the national co-conveners of Socialist Alliance, and I'm going to be sharing this session. Now, just to give you a bit of an overview of how we're going to run this final session, and I hope a lot of the attendees who have come to this conference have, been inspired by the kind of sharing of experiences, the kind of discussions and the debates that we've had. That's all very much in the service of how we can fight for a better world, especially in responding to the terrible climate crisis, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, but also, the inequality and the injustices that we have to face daily, that come daily as a result of the capitalist system we live under. So, in terms of how we're going to be running this kind of final session, we have got a bit of a roundtable of some of the international guests that you've actually probably heard from the past weekend. So we have Cyn Huang from the Democratic Socialists of America in the US. We have Reihana Mohideen from the Party of the Labouring Masses, and then we have Sue Bull, who is one of the other national co-conveners of Socialist Alliance. And then we have Sai Balaji from the Communist Party of India, Marxist-Leninist Liberation. We have Amanda from the PSM. And then we also have Kumar from Workers Make Possible in Singapore. And probably one of the ideas about this session is it's kind of an opportunity to kind of get a bit of kind of political kind of reflections on how the weekend has kind of gotten. So I'm going to be kind of answering a kind of series of questions. I will also be opening it up to the rest of the audience to ask a few questions, and then we'll conclude with kind of one final question that all the panelists will answer. All right. So I wanted to kind of invite Balaji and Sue Bull to respond to this first question, and also want to send if any of the other panelists want to kind of jump in. Feel free. So I guess the kind of first kind of question we want to kind of start off this kind of roundtable discussion is, what do you think? We've had this whole weekend of discussion. There's been a whole range of workshops and sessions discussing different kind of political topics. It's very much been, as I kind of mentioned at the start, it's been about this kind of fight for building international solidarity, building the case for socialist politics, but also building a stronger left. And I guess I want to kind of hear what has been some of the important political conclusions and themes that have come out of the conference. What are some of your reflections on that? And I was going to maybe start off with maybe Balaji to start off.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Socialist Alliance and comrades over here for hosting this wonderful conference and having an opportunity for us to meet different set of political activists and also comrades from Australia. I would say it was quite a learning experience, but as I have to put it in short and briefly state the few things that I think were quite interesting for me. One, I think the question of inequality, even in a first world country like Australia, has taken a significant space in the conference, be it the housing rights question. And when I say inequality not only in economic terms, but also in justice terms, the question of Palestine and the question of indigenous rights and the way they were presented and the conversations around that have happened, just not about what's happening in Australia, but also in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and US, as a specter of the granddaddy of the first world. So to have a sense of it, what are the movements, but not in the sense of an analysis, but also the responses from people. What are people doing in order to respond to this question of inequality, be it from US, be it from Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and how are people fighting it? I think one of the significant contributions of this conference is identifying those themes and presenting those stories in front of everyone, saying that maybe the language of oppression and the grammar of oppression might be different in different places, but the language of resistance and the color of resistance is rainbow across, and it's beautiful. And when people come together and share those experiences, it kind of gives an opportunity for others to learn from how people are organizing. Like, I can understand the situation in Singapore. It's not exactly the same in India, but we are heading towards Singapore, whereas Malaysia, I believe, is heading more towards the democratic side. Welcome, Malaysia. But the other significant question that I think I found very interesting is the China question. And the conversations whether China is imperial or not, and the answers that have come around. And I think Sam helped me understand this much better. I would like to thank Sam for this. So I'll give the credit. I'll just take 30 seconds to wrap it up. Because I think China, like Sam said, people looked up to it as an answer to the global capital crisis, or the answer towards the capitalism. But is it the answer? I think a lot of discussions around the conference happened around it, and people did answer that, and we all know what it is. It's not as if that we have to present a new picture. But one answer from the conversations that have arisen from that is, we can't depend on anyone. We can't depend on a nation state. We will have to depend on people's revolution or people's movement. It be it China, be it Australia, be it India, be it anywhere else. That uncritical acceptance of something is not good for progression of humanity. And I think that significant point of, I would not say awakening, but the reason that has come around, I think it's something interesting to gain for me to take it back, because China is a problem for us, but the questions and conversations around China that have emerged, something interesting which you generally, I mean, I have not found them in our circles around in India, and I think that was good. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for that, Balaji. Just on time. So I'm going to pass it on to Sue.
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying that this is actually our 6th Ecosocialism conference, which is pretty amazing. And it's our 3rd really large, where we put a lot of effort in and actually attempted to get a lot of comrades, not just from the Asia-Pacific and other countries, but actually from around the country. So we've actually attempted to bring a diversity of people here. And I think that's very significant, and I think it is one of the themes of this conference, to be honest, is that we need to talk to that diversity. I remember many years ago when I was sort of a Trotskyist, maybe I never really was, but I think I joined just as we left. The party that I was in was leaving. I was talking to Israel about it today. And I remember that that's what we were seeking. We were seeking ways to talk to broader layers of people. And one of the themes of eco-socialism is to have that dialogue with broader layers. And I'm not pretending for a minute that 250 people at a conference actually provides that, but it provides the beginnings of that. And it provides models for ways that we can talk and share and all of those sorts of things. So I think that's a theme. And it's also in a place that's, a very wealthy country where, despite what happened last weekend with the fascists, with the Nazis, which was very scary, you can still talk freely and you can exchange freely, and you can get most of the people you want to come here. I mean, it was outrageous that Emma and one of the Indonesian comrades didn't get here. But you can still get people here and you can have that dialogue. And that's important, because we need to have a space where we can talk freely to each other. But the other theme that I really noticed very strongly here, there's 2 others that I wanted to talk about. One is that I think, and this is really some of what you were just saying, Balaji, is we're starting to really get a handle on the contradictions of capitalism because the crisis of capitalism is getting worse. And every person in this room has seen that. No matter where they live, we've seen that. And we've begun to share that and we've begun to understand that better. Because, of course, sitting here in wealthy Australia, you can get a particular view of the world, but then you hear from these comrades and you know damn well that that's not the only view, and indeed it's only a minority view, because the majority of the world is not living the way we live in Australia. And these conferences make that so crystal clear. But it's also very clear that the revolutionary movement internationally is still weak. Like, it's tiny. And we're facing incredibly grave mobilisations of very dangerous people. And it's a dangerous situation for the working class internationally. And yet you come here and you begin to hear that there are people fighting back everywhere. And Gaza and the fight for Palestine has made that so obvious, and we reflect that. And I heard Comrade Israel from Brazil yesterday. He made a comment that to me really, I think really makes it very clear. And he said that the question of Palestine and the support for Gaza is the dividing line in the world today. And I have to agree, and I think we've done that very well at this conference. That's been a real incredible, important theme at this conference, that we have friends. We have people out there who might not be sitting in this room and might not entirely agree with us, but it is the dividing line. We know who's with us and we know who's against us. And that's becoming clearer. And sorry, can I just finish on one final thing? The last thing I wanted to say was that it's absolutely critical, and we're seeing this in our discussions, that we unite around what we agree on. And I think that's been a theme of this conference. We don't divide over what we disagree on, we unite around what we agree on. And I think that that's been a fabulous theme. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sue. Okay, so I guess the kind of next question we want to ask both Cyn and Reihana. One of the things that we've kind of promoted about eco-socialism is that it's still, in relative terms, one of the kind of largest gatherings of Indo-Pacific socialists that happens in the Western world, as you kind of heard from the toast that Tim Gooden gave yesterday at our dinner night last night. And probably one of the most, and it comes from a very much a long tradition that our organisation has very much been involved in, ongoing solidarity work with the Asia Pacific. We hosted very much massive conferences of over thousands of people around Asia Pacific solidarity in the 90s, which included lots of different kind of countries and representatives. And eco-socialism has been very much that kind of attempt at rebuilding that kind of work. What I guess I want to kind of pass on to Cyn and Reihana. What do you think are some of the things that the global left needs to consider and do, and the kind of actions we need to take to build international solidarity between oppressed people all over the world?
Thanks. Thanks, Jacob. Once again, thank you very much to the Socialist Alliance for organizing this conference and inviting us to attend. And we decided we'll have as strong a presence as we could. And I happened to be in Melbourne, so I joined. And of course, we sent Merck to represent PLM. And we also had a comrade join online. It's been a very rich discussion, a very important learning discussion for us. Very hard to choose the workshops you wanted to attend. I mean, there's, really critical topics, all very relevant to our struggles. A couple of things that really struck me, which is linked to the question I'm supposed to answer, is that I was impressed with the level of discussion about imperialism. and it was, it was attacked, if you like, through various angles. To me, I've attended a few of these conferences before, but not for a few years, actually. And compared to some of the previous conferences, it was really interesting to see the discussion and the depth around which this was examined. Raising the consciousness of a new generation, and that's not just in terms of age, but people coming into the struggle. Also a clearer understanding of the role of Australian imperialism. I was very impressed with the AUKUS panel and some of the contributions in the AUKUS panel. Really quite a detailed, in-depth understanding of Australian imperialism and its role in the region, combined with the presentations on the national struggles, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, and so on. And of course, these two are linked for us, really in a very practical way. It's fighting imperialism or an anti-imperialist position or struggle is not just a struggle against an external threat, such as US imperialism in the region. It's also very much a struggle against our own ruling class, which is utterly compromised, which sells out utterly. There's absolutely no concept of national sovereignty in our ruling class anymore. There was possibly some vestige of it, but even the vestiges have gone. And now it's really up to the massa, the people, to find ways of defending this national sovereignty in their interests, in their class interests. So these two things, fighting imperialism is not just as an external threat, but also oligarchy, capitalist oligarchy in the Philippines, and the political dynasties that rule and govern our political system. So these two aspects are interlinked. Merck made an appeal, a strong appeal for solidarity in the AUKUS discussion. And this is, for us, this is a very practical question, the question of imperialism, because we are in the region which is the focus of imperialism, focus of imperialist war, focus of imperialist economic containment of China, obviously, but all the countries in the region. All these tariffs, Trump tariffs, affect all of us. Any competitive edge we might have had on the international market, the slightest, we've lost it. So the question of international solidarity and finding ways of doing it in a very concrete and practical form is important. And I think there is scope to actually start up some targeted regional solidarity campaigns against AUKUS, against bases, against military exercises and so on. We had a discussion about this about 2 or 3 years ago, the Southeast Asian left, and I think it's time that we revive this again and have that discussion, including, of course, Socialist Alliance, and as broad and as inclusive as possible. Look at some targeted, coordinated international solidarity campaigns against what's going on in the region. Finally, Merck's appeal. I want to look at the other side of the appeal, Merck, and this is both to Merck and the comrades here. The Philippine left is one of the strongest revolutionary lefts in this region. There's no question about that. And we also have a responsibility. While we appeal for solidarity, the Philippine left, as a revolutionary left with a very strong tradition and still very organized and relatively strong, not as strong as we'd like to be, we also have a responsibility here. And I think at a certain level, in terms of this international solidarity work, as the head of the international work for PLM, I'd like to say that we will commit more of our time, more of our attention to some of these regional solidarity activities.
Yep. Asking an American to comment on internationalism is an interesting choice. I mean, given that it's not one of our strong suits, clearly we didn't want a good answer to the question. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, internationalism is not just a nice sounding, warm sentiment. It's got an objective basis in the kind of system that we live under, capitalism, that exploits people around the world, that will, coalesce capital to put down any kind of a rebellion that happens, no matter where it is. And it's also got an objective basis in the kind of vision that we're offering for the world, one based on cooperation, mutual respect, and solidarity. There's no matter how many times you say international socialism, it's not going to will itself into being. It's got to be an ongoing, indispensable practice. And just thinking about the question from the standpoint of a comrade, a leftist in the U.S., the task that translates into, first, we got to learn about each other's struggles, not just because learning about other places is an interesting thing to do, not because you want to have an encyclopedic knowledge to flex on other people, but in the sense that learning about other struggles is important because what happens in other places affects us. Trump is trying to move the U.S. into a society closer to what these comrades face. A regime where it's impossible or much more difficult for U.S. leftists to have freedom of association, freedom of speech. What are the methods that these comrades have developed to fight under more repressive authoritarian conditions? So we have to learn about each other's struggles, and not just in a pure defensive sense, a laboratory for repression somewhere else is going to be applied to us, but also in a more progressive, inspirational sense. One of the highlights of my militancy has been learning about our comrades in Brazil, in the Movimento Esquerda Socialista, who's represented here today by Comrade Israel, who's been mentioned a lot. This movement, MACE, is an organization that feels very similar to my own, but has 15 more years of development. And so they, have encountered struggles and have a youth movement that acts much more automatically than mine. And so, exchanging with them on a regular basis, sharing articles, having mutual discussions, has accelerated the thinking, the political practice of my group in some of the most beneficial ways. I really can't thank them enough. In addition to learning about each other, we need to connect our struggles through political education, not just in consciousness, but in our demands and our campaigns. Hopefully everyone emerging out of this weekend has a good sense of what that looks like in their context. I mean, coming from the U.S., you could rattle off a million different slogans, unfortunately, given that we're the belly of the beast, the imperial core, hands off Brazil, hands off Venezuela, every single country. You could go down a whole laundry list. Yeah, we got to build more opportunities for exchange. And I just want to reiterate something that I brought up during the last panel, is that, a lot of us here have been to a lot of well-organized conferences. One of the bright spots, one of the things that makes this one stand out, in my experience, is just the breadth and depth of the internationalism. People here are just so curious about what's happening in each other's countries. In the U.S. panel, unfortunately, because it's the U.S., people know a lot, but with respect to a lot of other countries too, there are some really really focused, specific questions that really get at the heart of strategic debates. It was really impressive to see a deep level of familiarity and interest. Another thing from the U.S. is that, since our left is so young and inexperienced, we have to look to the world for a foothold into a lot of different debates. At the most recent DSA convention, we didn't have systematic or explicit debates about, women, about ecology. And then meanwhile, I come to a conference like this, and it's, part of every group's DNA here. So it's a very big point of inspiration for us. And I just want to thank Socialist Alliance and Green Left especially because, like I said just now, the U.S. left does not have a lot of experience, a lot of publications or ideas that we directly inherited from traditions past. And so to learn about the world, to get connected with you all, we've had to read Green Left, we'd have to, read links, and use you guys as a tool to be better internationalists. And so, just want to thank you guys so much for that and for the invitation.
Thanks for that, Cyn. All right, and so this is going to be the next question that I'll ask of two of our other guests, and then we'll actually open it up for a bit of general discussion before I bring it back to the kind of final question that I'll get all six guests to kind of answer, and we'll kind of see how we kind of go there. When it comes to the last question, I would probably prefer more succinct kind of responses than probably what we get before. Just otherwise, we'll probably be here all day or all night. That is. Now, this is for Amanda and Kumar, but probably one of the kind of things, this actually follows really directly off, one of the points that Cyn raised about our conference. probably one of the kind of incredible things about this conference has been the kind of breadth of different struggles that we have captured. We captured the South Korean democracy movement. We covered politics and struggles in Malaysia, Singapore, Brazil, Latin America, and also the trade union movement in Australia, the anti-AUKUS campaign. And I guess for those, I want to ask Amanda and Kumar, what is some of your highlights in terms of kind of what you learned from the kind of struggles that are happening around the world at this conference? So I'll get the microphone passed off to who wants to take that up first.
Is it all right? Okay. Thank you. All right, great question. But first of all, I'd like to formally thank the Socialist Alliance for giving me the opportunity to be here today. This whole weekend was amazing, listening to all the conversations and meeting all these new comrades. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I have a few key points for me from the sessions that I attended. I really liked the session on why ecosocialism and an introduction to the Socialist Alliance. I think this is where they really emphasize the importance of non-sectarian movements. And I feel like it's very important for us to unite based on the issue that we're working on instead of focusing solely on principles or trying to argue who's more revolutionary. I think that's one of the key messages I definitely take back from that session. And it's also interesting to hear the way they organize. It's very similar to what the PSM does. And we really are the strongest when we are united and rather than working fragmented. And from the West Papuan session, which I was also a panelist, I really was honored to be able to meet and hear directly from West Papuans, because we know how much their voices are silenced. And that was a very incredible opportunity for me, and I'm glad to be able to connect with both Cindy and Paula, and I'm looking forward to our future conversations. And lastly, I also wanted to add on the women's liberation today, that session. It's true, the fight against patriarchy is global. Similar in Malaysia, we've got a lot of cases of femicide that's increasing, especially against younger women, lots of intimate partner violence cases, and these are the type of areas in which PSM is trying to work on. We're trying to do more for women in Malaysia in the sense of intimate partner violence. And all in all, the ruling class really wants us to feel isolated, but through conferences like this, we really get to see that the struggles that we're all going through is global. Everyone understands, and these conversations are so important, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity. Thanks.
Hello. Okay. I was thinking a lot about this question in the last few hours, and I was wondering how it felt actually looking at the live stream genocide that's been happening. And actually, like, I'm a really new leftist. The left in Singapore is a very nascent one. So if, like, Cyn, you're talking about the young US left, the Singapore is just like still, I don't know, maybe it's still in the womb or something. And we have so much work to do. And should I change the mic? Okay. Yeah, and you know, maybe it's a really naive thing to think about, but how it's just unbelievable to accept the fact that, you know, we've seen a live stream genocide. It's an objective truth that what's happening in Palestine is barbarism. right? We say eco-socialism or barbarism. Barbarism is taking place right now. And not just in Palestine, but in other places. But the Palestine movement is if there is a case that that there is humanity, right, and we have our humanity intact, we would all be the world would be revolting by now. But why has that not happened? So it was like comrades of mine, we're so young and naive, perhaps idealistic. We cry thinking about this because we feel so powerless in Singapore. What on earth can we do? We've tried things and we get locked up, we get arrested, we get charged, and people are thinking of doing things that will get them more charged, and we're thinking strategically, is this a good thing to do? Getting all of us locked up. It's an emotional response, but at the same time, is that the right thing to do? And I reflected on this a little bit more, and I asked myself this question: how did we get so weak? How did the left reach this point? It's perhaps not the inspiring thing to share in this kind of roundtable. But yeah, I think it's the truth, right? And we are in a very weak position. And I think conferences like this, these are important, right? To remember that we do have power. And capitalists, their advantage is money. Their advantage is capital. They can pull up as many resources as possible. But our advantage is actually people, right? And I think as the left, one thing I've realized in all the panels in all the panels I've participated in, and the conversations we've had with comrades, amazing comrades here, is that we need to remember our tactic of organizing. How do we build our base? How do we keep increasing our base? Because the ideas we have, they're winnable ideas, right? These are ideas that will win, but the question is how. And for example, panels like about how do we organize workers in today's economy, just simple frameworks. It's so bloody simple actually, but sometimes we overcomplicate it. Sometimes we think too much, and we're just like, no, I'm not gonna do it. It's like analysis, and then you got paralysis, right? And sometimes we just gotta do it and just gotta try. Simple things like, is an issue. I think something that one of the speakers spoke about. Is an issue widely felt? Is it deeply felt? Is it winnable? Right? This is very simple, easily graspable things, and I think we really need to implement these tactics in our own organizations. And I just want to say one more thing. Besides just one more idea thing, right? I really like the panel on eco-socialism, like specifically eco-socialist solutions to eco-socialism problems. And I think one thing that really changed my mind about degrowth was something that Comrade Peter Boyle said, is that, I think Peter Boyle said this, he said that degrowth is not the slogan, right? Degrowth is the program, right? The slogan is defund the military or defund this or defund this. And I think that's really was very clarifying for me, and it's useful to bring that back to my organization and talk to climate activists about such ideas and how we can build a popular movement based on these ideas. I just want to also just end off by talking about the relationships built in conferences like these. I think those are the most invaluable things, and whatever conference it is. I was joking with Chloe the other day. I said this was my first time in Melbourne, and I said, ever since I became a socialist, I'm traveling the world, man. Like, more people should just be socialists. Like, otherwise I wouldn't have the money to be here. Yeah. So thank you, Socialist Alliance. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Cuba. And that's just a bit of a funny anecdote. I mean, you do kind of travel the world as a socialist, because as someone who never set foot outside of Victoria, it was joining Socialist Alliance that I got an opportunity to visit Brisbane for the first resistance conference I went to. All right, so just for the next part, I'm going to be opening up for a discussion from the kind of general audience, but we're actually going to hear from Israel first before I take a kind of show of hands, because he had something he wanted to kind of share for us about an anti-fascist international kind of gathering. So I'll pass it on to Israel. And probably we should get people to... Wait, where's the microphone there?
Vamos a hablar en doble.
So we're going to speak in double here.
Tres cosas nomás muy pronto.
Just three very quick things.
En primer lugar, gracias a Socialist Alliance y a todos los invitados internacionales, porque lo que vi este fin de semana fue una verdadera casa del internacionalismo.
Firstly, I want to thank the Socialist Alliance and the other international guests, because what I saw this weekend was very much a school of internationalism.
Segunda cosa, en este momento, compañeros y compañeras, 3 compañeros del mes y muchos brasileños están navegando en las aguas de Túnez con la flotilla Sumut Global.
The second thing is I want to let you know that 3 of our members, along with a delegation of other Brazilians, are currently in the waters of Tunisia as part of the flotilla to Gaza.
Son 44 nacionalidades, liderada por un brasilero, Thiago, por Saif, un palestino que vive en Cataluña, y por la pequeña, grandísima ecosocialista Greta Thunberg.
So it's a delegation involving 44 countries, led by activists from Brazil, from Catalonia, and the well-known environmental activist Greta Thunberg.
Es muy simbólico que parta de Cataluña porque repetimos a su modo y sus proporciones el hecho de los internacionales en 36.
And it's very significant that they've left from Catalonia, because regarding all proportions, it reminds us of the internationalist brigades that also went in 1936 to Spain.
Es como una intervención desesperada, sincera, pero va junto las voces de todos nosotros.
So it's a sincere attempt for us to get there, and I'm sure that all of our voices are also being broadcast as part of this flotilla that's going.
Vamos a mandar cosas para ustedes diariamente por Fred, por las redes, para que hacemos esa voz llegar más lejos y romper el cerco.
And we will send news about what's occurring with the flotilla via Fred to be able to get that out daily, to be able to break the media blockade that's occurring.
Y mi última invitación, y termino por acá.
And my last point, I finish on this, which is my invitation.
En marzo del año próximo vamos a hacer una conferencia antifascista en Porto Alegre.
In March next year, we're going to hold a global anti-fascist conference in Porto Alegre.
Queremos resgatar lo que muchos ya estuvieron y saben, el espíritu de Porto Alegre, que en los principios del siglo XXI estuvo el Foro Social Mundial.
We want to rescue that spirit of Porto Alegre, which we saw at the beginning of the century with the World Social Forums that were held in Porto Alegre, and of which some of you may have participated in.
La conferencia tenía fecha en el año 2024.
We were originally going to have the conference in 2024.
Pero desgraciadamente una emergencia climática destrozó la ciudad y el aeropuerto quedó 6 meses cerrado.
But unfortunately, due to a climate disaster, an environmental disaster, the city was closed down, was flooded, including the international airport, so we weren't able to hold it.
La realización en marzo próximo, por tanto, será un pronunciamiento en favor del ecosocialismo y en contra de la emergencia climática prácticamente.
So us holding the conference next year will be very much a statement again against the climate crisis and for ecosocialism.
Queremos invitar a todos porque nosotros, como dijo muy bien Su, tenemos que ver lo que nos une.
And so I want to invite all of you, because as Sue very well said, we have to look at what are those points that unite all of us.
Y parar la mano de la extrema derecha es la madre de todas las batallas. No hay nada más importante hoy en el mundo que no hacer eso.
And today the most important battle is putting a halt to the far right. There's no more important battle today than we face no more important battle today than that.
Parar los fachos de la marcha por Australia.
Put a stop to the fascists behind the March for Australia.
Parar los Tommy Robinson y otros xenófobos de UK.
Stop the Tommy Robinson and the other xenophobes in the UK.
Parar Trump, Cast y Milei.
Put a stop to Trump, Cast and Milei.
Esto es nuestro desafío y queremos poner un pequeño grano desde Porto Alegre hacia eso e invitar a todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
And so that's our challenge, and we want to make our small contribution to that with the conference we plan to hold in Porto Alegre. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. All right. Okay, so just checking the time. So we're going to aim to kind of finish by 6 o'clock. So I guess I'll take a kind of round, of contributions. One thing, because of the number of kind of panelists we have here, we can't have a situation where all 6 of them answer your question. So if you have a question, please specify it to one of the panelists here. But if you also just want to make a general kind of comment, like any kind of political points that you might have thought about the conference, similar to what the international guests make, those are also welcome as well. So I guess I'll take a show. I've got Arlo. Anyone else? And you have 3 minutes, and then I'll take Peter. So maybe I'll take Arlo first. Or logistically, it could be Peter first, just because he's closer, and then Arlo second.
This is both a tribute and a question. I use the metaphor of the phoenix arising from the ashes because we have present here, participating in this conference, young activist comrades from 3 struggles or movements in our region, Southeast Asia, who have literally arisen like the phoenix from the ashes of past defeats, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, and from Singapore. In each of these countries, the movement of the left was brutally suppressed. And yet, and of course Indonesia, the worst, 1965, a massacre of horrendous proportions. And yet in each of these countries, we have here representatives of a new generation of activists who have literally arisen from the ashes, rebuilt a movement that is spectacular for its bravery and for its resilience. Comrades, what's the secret? My question is to the comrades from Malaya and Singapore.
All right, so I will take Arlo.
Yeah, so I just wanted to come back to that point again of a movement needing to be widely felt, deeply felt, and feeling winnable. And in terms of my Australian comrades in the room, one thing that I feel has come out of this conference for sure is it has given us such a breadth and a depth of insight and perspective into what is going on in our near vicinity. And I know that having conversations with people who might not come to a conference like this, might not have even been to a rally in the past, almost 2 years, there is often a pushback of, what can we do about it? Australia's such a small player. And we know that that's not true, but I feel like the more that we can communicate and build these relationships and build on momentum, the more we will have concrete answers that are able to be simple and understood by the masses, that can first be widely felt in order to then be deeply felt, in order to then feel winnable. And I really feel like this is a really important step in that process. And I wondered, Sue, with all of your experience in the unions, if there would be anything that you would be able to speak to that on.
Thanks for that, Arlo. I'll take one more. I think Sue kind of indicated, so I'll invite Sue to come up.
Well, I wanted to follow up about some of the intersections between the struggles in different countries. And I want to follow up on the point that Reihana made and Merck also made in the AUKUS session yesterday, and really thinking about the fact that the Philippines, they're not the only ones, but Philippines is right in the heart of where US wants to drag everyone into war with China. And it made me think that actually, yeah, there is a point for us to think about some solidarity actions across the region. We've done it before, especially around East Timor. But I think, you know, if you think of the Second World War, when the major imperialist powers used all the Pacific nations and other surrounding nations as their stomping ground for slugging it out. I think it is important for us to think about that and think about what sort of solidarity we can do practically. And we might not be able to answer all of that today, but maybe, you know, if Reihana or anyone else on the panel wants to, you know, respond about that particular point of what sort of things we could do practically, but there will be some discussions with international guests who are here after the conference. But also the other little snippet was Balaji mentioning to me the impact of one of our right-wing senators' comments about how, you know, Indians are the problem with immigration in Australia, and suddenly that caused a bit of some chaos amongst the Hindu chauvinists in India. But it just sort of, there's all these little ripples of intersection between our politics in different countries. So anyway, I mean, I don't know, maybe Balaji might also have some thoughts on some collaboration we could have as well. So maybe Reihana and Balaji.
All right. So maybe I'll take Reihana first to kind of respond to Sue's last question.
Thanks, Sue. I think we've really got a very strong basis to launch a regional solidarity campaign around AUKUS, around bases, around military maneuvers and so on. The Southeast Asian left had a conference during the height of COVID on Southeast Asian Left Socialism Conference, and we adopted a platform of demands, and we all agreed to this fairly comprehensive platform of demands, and I think we've got a very high level of unity on these questions. Yes, we can debate China and so on, and all that's very useful. But in terms of some of the immediate demands that we put forward for a solidarity campaign, I just wanted to quickly run through some of the key points of the Southeast Asian Left platform. All imperialist troops out of the region, close down all imperialist bases, dismantle imperialism's intelligence infrastructure, peace and common security policy, no to AUKUS, dismantle authoritarian ultra-rightist fascist regimes in the region. You know, there's no disagreement on this. There's unity on these basic demands, both in terms of our own governments as well as imperialism's intervention. So that's not an issue, high level of unity, and I think this is a really strong basis to run some very obvious regionally coordinated campaigns.
Thanks for that, Reihana. So I'm going in reverse order with the questions, so I'll pass it on to Sue next, and I'm not sure if it was Amanda or Kumar who wanted to respond to Peter.
Yeah, I'm not entirely certain of what your question is, but because my experience in the union is not exactly the same as the experience we have in left politics. I mean, it can be quite different. I mean, I learned in the union how to write a shit sheet on the worst bastards you've ever met and write it anonymously. Something I would never do in left-wing politics. Because I think the things that are similar is that we actually have to build alliances. And that's one thing you learn in the union is that you've got to look for people that you can fight with. You've got to look for agreement with those who don't want to just sit down and take it, but who want to go out there and get a fight happening. And that often just takes incredible bravery because it means that you've got to push yourself forward and play a leadership role, whether you like it or not. And I think that is relevant left-wing politics and what we're trying to do here. We do need to rebuild. We do need to develop confidence, and one of the ways you develop confidence is by talking to each other, by meeting face to face, learning from each other. Oh, how did you do that? Oh, we've never quite done it that way, but we probably could. Learning from each other through the experiences that you have, by keeping an open mind and by knowing that we're not going to agree on everything. Like in the union movement, you have to work with people that you often don't agree with. But you know that if you don't work together and find a way forward, your members are not going to get a pay rise. Or I'm from the construction industry, your members will die. We have massive death rates. And the saddest thing about seeing the CFMEU being manoeuvred out of the agenda is construction workers will die. But then I'm also reminded of a comrade from India, from the CPIML actually, in 1998. He was a member of Parliament, and he stood up there and told us that he'd been on a picket line, and they'd been linking arms and holding it together, and it was pretty full on, went for hours, and all of a sudden the authorities turned up and shot and killed the man next to him. He just fell and was dead. And you go, oh fuck, that certainly doesn't happen here. But you learn from that, because the fact is that comrades in the third world countries have to put themselves on the line in a way that we can't even imagine here. And these were workers, a parliamentarian, a communist standing there next to a worker, and that worker was killed. So I guess that's what we learn, is we learn from each other. We learn how to work together, how to fight together, and actually build a fight back. And that's what workers around the world have got to teach us, and that we've got to be brave enough to take on and then show leadership in that process. So I hope that answers your question, Arlo. Oh, thank you.
All right. Amanda or Kumar? I'll only take one. So, Amanda.
Okay. Yeah. Once again, this is a question I always ask myself. What is the secret? How do I keep doing this? I'm sure we all know how tiring it can be to be an organizer or a socialist. Why did I choose this road less traveled, But this is just my commitment to the struggle. I am just someone who cannot sit down when I see any form of injustice. It's just not right for me to just sit down. So I feel like that's why it makes more sense for me to be more involved. And I feel like anything done together with others, with my comrades, is more worthwhile, I get more energy when I spend time with my comrades than by staying home alone and resting, trying to recuperate. I somehow get more energy when I spend time with my comrades, no matter how tired I am. And I think that's very important, going down to the ground and just when you're working with people and you see that what you're doing is actually beneficial, that nothing can ever beat that feeling. Yeah. That's all.
Thanks for that. All right. So we're Balaji. Yeah, I just remembered that there was that.
I'll manage. Yeah, I'll wrap it up quickly. I think this was the point I was making in the tariff session, that what actually has happened across the world with the far right rising, especially in the US and Trump getting elected, the whole tariff regime and the way India has been shown its place. India has the highest tariff as of now, 50%. And we are in a golden league of only 3 other countries who are lesser than us, but otherwise nothing. And the response from my government and my Prime Minister has been silence. This has given a confidence to the far right that this is one community that can be played with. I mean, my sense and a general understanding about it is the far right is well funded, well organized, and has complete takeover of the communication channels never before the 21st century, I believe. With that confidence, exactly what they've tried in Australia is to pick on a community that they know they have an alliance globally, but you pick, you beat it, you do whatever you want, you know that you can always manage it in a level that you want to do it. I think that a sense of helplessness is what they wish to create. And I think that was one reason I was thinking, why the Indian community? I mean, you have other communities too. Why did you name them? One reason for that also is the Indian community has not politically participated in the political process of Australia till date. They kept their head down, they earned their money, maybe sent money back, taught their kids, they got a better life, and they lived a dignified life, quietly. And they responded politically when needed. But the political mobilization that the other communities have or had was never seen from the Indian diaspora, at least in the Australian politics. Unlike other places like US, UK, Canada, where you have the Indian diaspora representing in the government, in political parties, as leaders, I think that vacuum is what maybe the far right has sensed, or they thought, see, Trump is doing it to Indians. Mr. Modi, the 56-inch chest that he has is deflated. He's not worried about them. Maybe he's only worried about his friend Adani. So maybe let's go after them. I think that's the sense I got. And I think the only way forward would be to stand by, and also the promise, I mean, a promise a migrant gets in a new country is, the reason why they stay is they get dignity. And they want a dignified life. And the moment that's taken away from them, that's where the politics starts. I think the far right has started that. And I think it's a point where one has to reassert dignity and fight for it. Thanks.
Right. So before, I was going to ask a kind of final question at some point, but I actually just wanted to open it up to some of the international guests who, some of them who have been speakers, some of them who are not. I know there's another comrade here from the United States here as well, travelled from the United States. If they're like any of the Indonesian comrades or Yong from South Korea would like to add anything to the discussion. Yun? Right, Yun?
Comrade, can you hear me? Yeah, it's okay. This is, I told a couple of friends and comrades that this is 25 years, because I was here in 2000, Marxism 2000 in Sydney, and after that I came here to visit my friend here. So it's, at the time I thought I could come anytime, but anytime turns out to be 25 years. A young man in the mid-30s, now over 60. But in meantime, the party changed its name, but I can find the old faces. It's a very lovely moment for me personally. And as for, I'm very impressed that many young comrades working together with the old guard. Yeah, this is quite important phenomena for the sustainability of our resistance against global and local capitalism. I love being here every moment, but however, now we are living very tough period. We have a crazy guy at the center of empire, and locally, regionally, we have many problems intersected and accumulated. So that, I think, this meeting can be a point to connect all the struggles together. I hope soon we are not just meet and talk together, but struggle together regionally and internationally. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Young. All right. Do any of the Indonesian comrades like Nisa want to say anything? I think I put a bit on the spot. I don't think it's all good. Okay, I'll just take I think I have time to take one more question and one more comment, if anyone would like to indicate this point. All right, I'll take Rachel.
Thanks very much, comrades. It has been a very exciting conference, very informative. I've been pretty excited to read the joint statements from the Asia-Pacific Left organisation, the Malaysian, the Philippines, and we've put out some joint statements on a few key questions of the day. And I think that Reihana's point is an important one for us to think on. I also think that we are in the time of monsters and we are in the time of mass movements. So, and it's Palestine that is weakening the US, and it's Palestine that is taking the hit, actually, against the fascist regime. There was a Palestinian activist who said the martyrs who are being murdered in Palestine are the ones at the front line of this fascist assault. So I guess my question is there more that we can do in the region to push back against AUKUS and the US, and Israel, the US, I guess it is. And there's a campaign that we've got going on, No Coal for Israel, which was actually inspired by Colombia, and they're ending the coal exports to Israel. Australia is increasing, as is South Africa, coal to Israel. So I guess my question to the panel is there joint work that we can do to push back against Israel, US, AUKUS, that will weaken further the US push in the region and in the Middle East?
Thanks for that. I've just been... Aldi, would you like, from Socialist Union in Indonesia, would you like to make a contribution?
Terima kasih, selamat sore semuanya.
Thank you and good afternoon everyone.
Terima kasih untuk Socialist Alliance sudah mengundang Socialist Union dan juga organisasi kaum muda sosialis di konferensi ini. Ini merupakan konferensi yang sangat berkesan untuk kita dan juga kami mengharapkan ada solidaritas internasional di Australia berhubungan dengan perjuangan bangsa West Papua, berhubungan dengan perjuangan rakyat Indonesia melawan militerisme hari ini.
Thank you to the Socialist Alliance for inviting the Socialist Union and the Socialist Youth Organization of Indonesia to this conference. It has been a very impressive conference for us, and we are hoping to build an international solidarity for the struggle against militarism in West Papua and in Indonesia.
Ada masalah yang sangat genting hari ini, di mana kekuatan imperialis sangat kuat menghancurkan rakyat Palestina, mengusir rakyat Palestina dari tanahnya. Dan di Indonesia ada Prabowo yang sangat kuat atas bantuan imperialisme juga, dan kekuatan militernya bertumpu pada kekuatan imperialis juga.
There is a very urgent matter right now going on in the world, which is the imperialism that is going on in Palestine that has been costing thousands and millions of lives. And there's also the same issue of militarism, which is supported by imperialism in Indonesia, done by Prabowo.
Ya. Jadi solidaritas internasional antar kelas pekerja di negara-negara imperialis dan negara-negara dunia ketiga sangat penting. Jadi solidaritas internasional antara kelas pekerja di negara imperialis dan juga di negara dunia tertindas atau kelas dunia ketiga sangat penting.
So international solidarity between imperialist countries and third world
working class in imperialist country.
working class and the people in imperialist countries and in the third world countries is very important.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
All right. Also, just want to make one announcement, just since for the Indonesian comrades. The comrades in Socialist Union are actually fundraising. You might have noticed there's a bit of a table out there with some of their merchandise that they've actually been trying to sell to actually fundraise for their trip to Australia. In fact, they're going to be here for the next week or so. So yeah, I'll just like before comrades leave the conference to actually check out their merchandise on the table outside in the reception area and yeah, consider buying some of it. All right, so how I'm going to do this, there was a question sort of directed, but I kind of wonder if potentially the question that Rachel asked could possibly be addressed in the context of the final kind of question that I'm going to sort of answer of the panel, because I think there is a bit of a link between the thing. So I want to kind of throw it to all the kind of panelists in terms of like a kind of concluding kind of question. You know, the conference theme is eco-socialism, not barbarism, and obviously, one of the kind of themes about that is responding. I think, I completely agree with Kumar that, what is happening in Gaza is a great example of barbarism. We're actually living through, a world where that is considered acceptable and supported by the so-called countries that claim to be liberal and democratic. And given everything, I guess, we have discussed and debated over the weekend, why do you think that the case for eco-socialism revolution, for a real break from capitalism, is more urgent than ever? And I guess I want to kind of invite the panelists to kind of address that question. And it could be done in sort of any order. Maybe I'll do it with Cyn first. And then we'll just operate.
Eco-socialism, not barbarism, is relevant because we have not transcended capitalism, and neither are we just living in any old phase of capitalism. The barbarity that is on display in Gaza, the expiration date that the climate emergency has put on humanity, means that there is no other choice but to build a society that is radically democratic and in harmony with nature. And so there's no going back to any kind of status quo. After all, the status quo is what got us here. So eco-socialism or barbarism it gets straight to the heart of it. And so I'm glad to use this weekend as a launch pad to coordinating our struggles and building eco-socialism with you guys.
Well, absolutely. The point that Kumar made, barbarism is here. We see Gaza as a clear-cut example, and we have to fight barbarism today. And of course, in the global south, there are various forms of barbarism that people have to deal with on a daily level. In terms of poverty, in terms of hunger. I mean, in the Philippines, the hunger is rising, and you've got all these indicators from development agencies about levels of hunger and so on. But hunger is rising. Suicides are increasing, especially amongst young people as well. There's a real desperation. There's an existential crisis daily around a whole range of issues in the global south. So, Singapore, of course, is more privileged, but certainly in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and India, the various forms and degrees of barbarism that our people, including our base, including our organizers, the desperation that they face and still continue to work full-time for the movement is just incredible. that kind of loyalty to the struggle, that kind of institutional loyalty to the party. Once you've won the loyalty of the massa, they're committed, and under enormous, incredible, impoverished conditions. Hardly be able to feed their families, and the party, we don't have the money to give them proper wages, a living wage. We have to campaign and struggle and fight for it. We basically give them a pittance, which is probably the same in India, and comrades manage. So, this is a situation where we're struggling with it. We're struggling with it on a daily basis. Eco-socialism is, while the climate is a key aspect of it, and in the Philippines we've used it as a way of describing the links between fighting climate justice and so on, and capitalism. It is about everything else. Eco-socialism is about socialism in these times where everything is interconnected. We're all on the front, and because of this, we are all of us in Australia, in the US, in the global south, where this is a life and death struggle. We are all on the front lines. What we do now really does matter. However small, however big, however medium sized, what we do now really does matter. Organization is absolutely key. PLM is having a national council meeting. The whole agenda is about organizing. And we want more of our young people. Peter and I are long in the tooth. Most of our lives we spent as full-timers. Most of the leadership in the Philippines are still full-time for the movement. We need more young people to commit to organizing. And this is one of the key discussions that we're having in PLM. Please, we do need more young people to commit as organizers to continue the struggle. This is a life and death struggle. We're all on the front lines. Tuloyang laban!
Yes, I have to agree with the comrades. Barbarism is already here, and the contradictions within capitalism are increasing as we speak. And I think we captured that really well at this conference. I think we started to really come to grips with just the terrible contradictions that are out there, but what the impact is on working class people around the world. Like, Tim and I just got back from this trip around Australia, and it was an incredible trip, but the thing I want to say is that it does make you realise just how disgusting the living conditions of our First Nations people are. I agree that the poverty in the third world is horrific, but we've got a community in this country that is locked out of wealth, locked out of participation, locked out of the living conditions that the whole rest of the country essentially enjoys. And no one gives a fuck except us, and the solidarity activists who are shocked, and then suddenly last week, they're attacked, and everyone goes, oh, that's disgraceful. Yes, it is. But so are the living conditions of something like 100,000 people that are actually not allowed to participate in the richest country in the world. So that's barbarism, and we're seeing it, and we try to reflect that. So I think that's what makes this so urgent, that the things we're trying to do are more urgent than ever. They're depressing and frightening, yes, but I'm a revolutionary optimist, and I think most people in this room are. I think we can make a difference, and we're going to do absolutely everything we can to make that difference. And I think that's the commitment you make when you walk in the door here, is to learn from each other and work out how we're going to do that. And I think this is a little contribution to that. So yes, it's urgent and we have to get moving. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyn.
Yeah, I think each and every one of us have felt this weight of just living under this capitalistic society, and it's not something that's beautiful. Especially in Malaysia, we see a lot of queer repression. And this is just one of the cases where we were trying to organize a sexual health workshop that led to us getting around 200 police reports against the organizers. And we were brought for questioning and stuff like that. And death threats were even made, and it's just such a mess. But it just always reminds me of what is the thought process like when it comes to organizing in such a repressive, conservative state. And it almost feels impossible to move on, but it is not. It is just one of the interruptions we face, but we will not stop here. We will not let this bring us down, and this is where our comrades and us all are willing to put on the fight. And another thing is that, living in this world, it's not beautiful. It can feel very frustrating a lot of the times, but the worse it gets, people ought to move to the left, you know. People will move, whether through migration, through resistance, or through the revolution. And the day will come where we see the socialist future that we all dream of.
Yeah, yeah. I think the question of eco-socialism or barbarism, we have no choice, and it's because barbarism is right at our front door. It's sometimes just next door, and I think from the Singaporean point of view, it's the barbarism that we are a part of as well. I'm not sure how many people are aware that to house so many Singapore's you know how small it is, right? You can't even identify it on the map. But there's I think it's the same population as Melbourne, if I'm not wrong. Like I think we have 5.5 million people in that little dot there. And the question is, how are you housing so many people? How are you accommodating everyone? Oh, it's simple. We steal your land, you know, like we steal land from Indonesia, we steal land from Cambodia. I'm not sure which other countries, but literally it's next level land theft auto, you know, like we're just taking the sand and we're putting it on our seabeds and we're just building buildings over it. It's insane. It's barbaric. Right, and I think of just the things that we know, and it's already so much, and there's so much more that we don't even know, and so it goes back to the question of how urgent this is. We can get really overwhelmed by just the amount of stuff we need to deal with, right? But I think the more important thing is to try to at least put up a fight, to at least give it our best shot. And I think we give it our best shot by having an organizing disposition. How do we build bases? How do we grow our base? I think that's really, really important. If we need to think about we're not an interest group, right? We're socialists, right? We need to bring more people into the movement, and we need to use whatever leverage we have to fight for the future that we want. And just one other point is that, just a reflection, we're often defending ourselves, right? I do wonder, you know, how about an offensive strategy, right? What does an offensive strategy look like for socialists, right? And maybe this is just too idealistic, but yeah, you know, what would that look like? We're always defending against attacks, right? But what does an offensive strategy look like? Yeah, thank you.
The advantage of a last speaker is that more or less everything is covered. But I think I get to answer a lot of questions which I felt were there, but in just few words and in few seconds. The answer for barbarism, I think, is courage, not hope. Hope is something good, and I think it's much more romantic. But courage is something that is rooted in organizing. It's rooted in resistance. And courage is something to have a world, to have a vision for a world that is offensive, not defensive. I think when we have courage, that is why when the foreign policies of the different countries across the world have failed for Gaza, it is the people's policy, the streets policies of the world that stood for the Palestinians. And when I think about what is this one thing that binds everyone together or brings us together, and what would be the future like, I mean, I think about the struggles of the sanitation workers or the contract workers or the gig workers in India, Philippines, the poorest of the poor, for whom resistance is not an option. It is something they want to live on a day-to-day basis because that's how they survived. Now they don't want to survive. They want a world that has something greater than that. That's why they maybe join the Communist Party. That's why they join the socialist parties. That's why they join the revolution. I think one thing, I'm not an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. But I don't look at the world that way. When capitalism acts as a machine, resistance and courage should also act as a machine. We don't have a choice. But does not mean that we are acting out of compulsion. But we are acting out of love for the people that we live and humanity that we believe in. So it can't be a compulsion for us. It is a natural thing for us to do. And I think that is the answer why people like you, me or others, maybe Sue and others who have stuck to this. And also it's a sticky rice. We stick to this. Thank you.
All right. So, give a round of applause for the speakers. All right. So, before we finish up the conference, and I hope everyone's had a fantastic time, I just want to make, I guess, a number of announcements and also have some important announcements that pertain a bit more to the immediate situation. But I just want to kind of make a bit of an announce to say that, you know, if you've been, I guess, kind of inspired by the conference, which has been put out by Socialist Alliance and Green Left, I mean, you could consider joining Socialist Alliance or getting active with us. And also, I think importantly, if you're not already a financial supporter of Green Left, which is the kind of activist media, it's the kind of weapon that we have, you know, against the kind of injustices in the world, you know, consider becoming a financial supporter. The other thing I just want to announce is if you are based in Melbourne, Socialist Alliance is going to be doing a kind of event, another seminar, kind of examining kind of Marxist ideas, and it's going to be titled The Relevance of Marxism Today. So we're going to be having that in Melbourne on Saturday, October the 18th, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The location's still to be kind of announced, but save the date and keep an eye on further details on the Green Left website. Also, I guess the kind of other thing I kind of want to announce is that, you know, Socialist Alliance is actually seeking registration registering for elections in at least 5 states, and we're trying to get registration in Victoria, Queensland, Tasmania, Western Australia. What's the other one? And South Australia. So you can sort of find some details about that. But yeah, we are going to start really campaigning for to get re-registered at least in Victoria. And now the more kind of immediate things. We will, if comrades want to kind of continue the kind of discussion, I did ask the organisers about this, but no one seemed to come up with any better suggestions. We will meet up maybe at the Retreat Hotel, which is just right over there, to kind of continue the kind of discussion. But really, the most important thing that we actually have to do is to help clean up this venue. There's already some hard-working comrades who have started to clean up the venue. The most important thing is we've got to start stacking the chairs. We've got to get down all the posters that are stick together on white tack. We've also got to clean up the rubbish, and there's a whole range of things. But yeah, maybe let's start off by getting the chairs stacked and start cleaning. And if you also see any rubbish on the floor, please pick it up. And also give a big thank you to Ballon Place for letting us use this venue. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.